US suicide rate is one of the highest in the Western world. A new federal report reveals that at least 44 private pilots have deliberately killed themselves by crashing their light aircraft, with obviously dramatic and fatal results. Elsewhere, Oklahoma police found 4 dead bodies, 2 of them young boys, in an apparent murder-suicide. This kind of news is frequent in America and is shaking the country from coast to coast. Many are questioning whether these deaths are caused by the mental state of the American people or by a failure of government policy. Either way, it is hard to explain why, for example, a 13-year-old boy shot dead his 6-year-old brother and injured his 16-year-old brother before committing suicide in Florida, or why a US gunman in Fresno, California, fatally shot a woman and then committed suicide himself at a medical office. Though analysts are trying to figure out exactly why these horror stories are occurring across the country, no official explanation has yet been offered. Are these tragedies caused by the mindset of the American people or by a failure of American government policy? How do these deaths and suicides make the public feel about their society? And what does it tell them about the development of crime and social decay in their land? These are the simple questions we sought to answer, and we began with this. As we've heard, at least 44 private pilots have committed suicide by crashing their planes. Why is it that so many people, many of them wealthy, have chosen to take their own lives in the home of the American dream? Here's what the American public said.
I don't know, very sad. They say psychiatry saves lives, they say psychiatry kills, but they say psychiatry saves lives, so I have no opinion. I'm very sad about the suicides.
Well, from extreme pressures, peer pressure, right? People are weak these days, you know what I'm saying? It's a very sad commentary when people decide to take not only their lives, but other people's lives. That's the way I look at it.
I guess because of the war.
What do you mean?
I mean, you know, soldiers are coming back, and they're not getting, I guess, the whatever they need, all that. So people are getting into drugs and stuff like that, and I guess.
I know that the VA is not doing a great job with their psychiatric for the vets, so I don't know that the healthcare in the country is doing that great. Why is it particularly with pilots? It's hard to say. I mean, if it was suicidal, are they terrorists? I guess you got to look at who they are.
I don't know.
To be a private pilot, you have to be relatively wealthy. Why would so many apparently successful American residents seek to kill themselves in this way? We asked our experts.
Well, although these statistics show 44 aircraft being crashed by the pilots, so pilot suicide in the past several decades in the US, if you actually look at the statistics on the World League table, the US is 30 in the World League table for suicide in this past year's statistics, and going back 2 years to 2013. The countries like Hungary and South Korea and Greenland, much, much smaller than the US. The US has a population of 320 million, are way at the top, and the US is 30, the UK is 38th in the World League table for suicides. So we can look at a statistic like that and say that perhaps it's because in the past 10 years, the United States has suffered, because of the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks, a financial downturn, and in 2008, the major financial meltdown, which also affected the UK and the world. People are feeling pinched financially. Even affluent people are having trouble making ends meet. They worry about their children and grandchildren. And people feel very pressured financially. And I think this is one of the biggest causes of suicide, particularly in men who feel that they have to support their families. And I think that these worries and problems are not just confined to Americans. They're confined to people in every country in the world, where people are going to food banks, don't have enough money for health care. And that is a big issue in the United States, not being able to finance your health problems.
Well, America clearly has a lot of of problems. I mean, I grew up in Southern California, and I remember the incredible amount of superficiality, the materialism that is there. Really, people are measured almost by their material wealth. This is one problem amongst many problems. We've also had a tremendous evolution of moral and spiritual decay. I mean, you know, America's built on this notion of freedom and democracy and being a good guy around the world, but that's not what we are. So, in truth, a lot of Americans are having to face up to the fact that maybe the one thing that was solid for them, their love of America, you know, the greatest nation in the world, to belong to something to feel good about, that's no longer there, really. Only the most deluded of Americans think for a second that the nation is actually on a good path not just for them, but for the rest of the world. And that's a small part of it, but deep down at the core of it, I believe, is the isolation that comes from materialism and really spiritual depravity. And I don't see how this problem is really going to get any better, because the American people largely are still not facing the facts, both individually and collectively as a nation. And if we do face up to these facts of what we've done for my birth nation, there's a lot of people going to be spending a lot of time in jail, and a lot of people who probably would be put to death, quite frankly, for the kinds of crimes they've committed. So both on an individual level and collectively, we're suffering as Americans for a lot of important reasons.
US police in Oklahoma entered a home to find 4 dead bodies, including 2 young boys, in an apparent murder-suicide. How do such murders and suicides make you feel about US society? That's the question we put to the American public.
Not good. Yeah, I mean, I'd have to know more about the situation, what's going on there, but it's scary, sure. Yeah, it's sad. Murder, suicides, I mean, they're killing their kids. That's, I don't know. That's horrible.
Well, murder and suicide, they make me feel good in any society. So I think each case is different, and you'd have to look at what brought about an instance where somebody's committing suicide or killing themselves or deciding that life is not worth living. But there are a lot of factors that contribute to that. I'd have to look at the case to comment.
These murders make me feel how they make me feel about society is scared. Like, I have nowhere to go. We don't. Like, we are scared.
It's terrible, real bad.
No discipline, right? There's no love anymore. You have kids having kids. There's no structure anymore. It's a sad comedy because people don't work. They don't believe in God. They have no faith. They have nothing to believe in.
What impact do such murders and suicides have on America's own state of mind about itself? We invited our experts to share their perspective.
These suicide, homicide cases in the United States amongst children are, of course, very disturbing. One of the issues that I think causes so many of these terrible tragedies is that children have access to guns in the same way as adults in the US. And guns are readily available, not so much in the United Kingdom. Certainly, if we have a lot of gang warfare in London, but if there is going to be a crime amongst children, it's usually knife crime. But in the United States, guns are available. Youngsters also watch social media. So the parents can't always know what their children are watching on Twitter, on Facebook, online videos, online films. Children are victims of what they call trolls. Other young people who bait them, taunt them, bully them, say you're fat and ugly to a 9-year-old who then tells himself or herself, I am fat and ugly, and they begin to get more and more depressed. They're not very good at explaining their feelings to their parents or to friends, or they get bullied at school, and they end up getting hold of a gun and killing themselves and often killing someone else with them.
Well, America is a very violent nation, and we know this. There's on the major cities in America every night, you've got one murder after another, one rape after another, kidnappings. It's a very violent society, and this obviously is going to manifest in a lot of ways that aren't so pleasant for society. In fact, we see many of the people who we've sent off to these illegal wars and invasions. Many of them are coming back home. They're committing suicide. In fact, the statistics are roughly 22 American service members a day, at least, are committing suicide. Well, why is that? Well, because we've sent them off to kill people, and they've killed a lot of innocent people. In fact, everyone they've killed in the nations they've invaded are innocent, quite frankly, because every one of them has a right to defend their nation. If the situation were turned and it was the American people who were being invaded, what would we do? Well, of course, we would defend ourselves and we would kill the invader. We wouldn't allow them to come in and steal our land and violate our women and children and, kill people indiscriminately. That wouldn't be allowed. So, we're suffering because we're actually the ones doing that on a collective level. And back home, we already have so many issues. We see the massive injustice towards black people. This is becoming more in the light now, but every black person who's not been born with a silver spoon as some sort of token Uncle Tom knows that racism is alive and well, black president or not. And, so we've got these very deep social issues in America, which basically have been swept under the carpet for many generations now.
A US gunman fatally shot a woman and then went on to deliberately kill himself at a medical office in Fresno, California. What causes such lethal action? The mindset of the American people or a failure of American government policy? We asked that question to the public.
I think that the first thing you said, I think about the mindless people because now, like I said, people, they take out people now for no reasons at all. We should ban guns. I lived in Europe people don't have guns over there. Society is fine. But if you have possession of guns, you're going to use it sooner or later. You're going to get mad, and there's going to be anger in your life. You know what I'm saying? A lot of innocent people die all the time.
There's too many weapons, and it's too easy to buy and use those weapons.
I think mindlessness. Yeah, I'm gonna go with mindlessness.
Why?
I mean, nobody, the government or anybody doesn't make you do anything you don't want to do. So,
Gun ownership is legal in this country, and I don't necessarily agree with gun ownership, but I think if you have people who are mentally unstable and feel that they've been mistreated, they have access to guns more so than I think they should, and then they will use a gun to act inappropriately. So I don't know if the government's at cause or if the medical office at cause. But again, you have to look at each case differently to come to a conclusion as to why these things happen.
By the government's failure to act.
What do killings such as this one involving murder and suicide in Fresno, California, tell us about what's going on in America? We asked our experts.
This particular case quoted of a gunman shooting someone at a medical office in Fresno, California, a member of staff, and then shooting himself. It's not common, but it does happen. Americans have terrible problems with financing medical care. It's possible he was so frustrated that he couldn't get any coverage for his illness or his wife's illness. The gun lobby in the US is so strong. The National Rifle Association, the NRA, which throughout the 1960s, 70s, 80s was run by Charlton Heston, the great film actor. And many Americans feel they have to have guns to protect themselves. Who live in the country, they're frightened of being attacked by wild animals. I mean, the United States is a huge country with a tremendous amount of wildlife and dangers. Americans seem to think they need to protect themselves. It's in the Second Amendment of the Constitution. But I think this is more to do with the worries of Americans about life in general, particularly with health care.
There's no question that the American people haven't acted, and really part of the problem is that we're waiting for someone else to act. Oftentimes we've become so dumbed down and dependent that we're relying on, for instance, the government to sort out the problem. The fact is that the government is a problem for us, and the reason why is that we haven't taken control of our position. The people of America, or any democracy for that matter, are supposed to have control over their representation. They're supposed to have real representation. They do not. So the police aren't going to solve the problem. The courts aren't going to solve the problem. The government, period, is not going to solve the problem. The only way to solve any problems, really, of any significance, are to deal with them face-to-face, one-to-one, man-to-man, woman-to-woman, society together. And ultimately, the real problem isn't going to be solved by the government, police, or courts. So when people are waiting for something to happen, waiting for someone to act, the funny thing is, the irony is, they're really waiting on themselves. And this is where America finds itself. No one's coming to save you from the disaster, the train wreck that your nation is being driven down. That path is sheer suicide. It's completely self-destructive. and no one's coming to save you. Unless you save yourself, you're going to destroy this beautiful nation which has so much going for it.
Here's another example. A 13-year-old boy shot his younger 6-year-old brother dead and wounded his older 16-year-old brother before going on to kill himself in Florida. We asked the public what they find most disturbing about such an event and to speculate on why it may have occurred in the first place.
I really have no idea why a 13-year-old would shoot and kill people. Maybe it's the gun culture. I don't know.
The worst part is that he was 13. He's obviously still a child. He's still developing. It's what's going on around him. What are the influences that are causing him to act so violently?
It's all terrible. I think guns should not be near the hands of minors, and it's a tragedy all around. How can there be one thing that's worse than another? A kid may go to jail for the rest of his life. Who's 16 years old. Certainly, the death of his brother is an awful thing. The family suffers. It's a no-win. Nobody wins. Everybody's suffering. I don't think it's good, no matter how you look at it.
I think the worst part was his brother shooting his own brother and then hurting his own other brother.
Probably the worst part of the story is that he was a child, and child should never arrive to touch a weapon. I believe that if you want peace in a country, you should not allow to have so many weapons around, so many guns.
Why would a 13-year-old boy kill his younger brother, injure his older brother, and go on to kill himself? We wondered if our experts could make sense of what, on the face of it, looks like a senseless loss of life.
Young people are very capable of very violent crimes in America. And because really the nation has taught us, hasn't it, that if you want to solve a problem, you go and kill people. I mean, ultimately, that is the message we send. In fact, we can go to Iraq and the so-called weapons of mass destruction. Isn't it funny that Saddam Hussein literally did get rid of his weapons of mass destruction, and what was the reward for that? The entire country was laid waste. I mean, it's still suffering to this day and will be for generations to come. We teach our children and our society and the world, for that matter, that the way to solve your problem is through violence. And this is ridiculous, but this is exactly what we've done. Look at Iran, a nation that has committed no acts of aggression towards its neighbors, even when provoked quite seriously. And the only war that it's fought has been a war with Iraq, which was being done at our behest as the empire. So we solve problems through violence, and we expect the rest of the world also to conduct themselves this way. So we assume that everyone would kill you if they have something, or if you have something that they covet. And so this pervades every aspect of American society. If you want something, use violence. If you don't get what you want, use violence. I mean, this is an insane way to be living as a society, and yet this is exactly what we're doing. So it's not altogether surprising to see young kids picking up weapons, murdering family members, and committing suicide themselves.
No fewer than 8 US medical associations now report that gun-related casualties are a major public health crisis. In the light of this, how do the American public feel about American crime and social decay? We asked them.
Well, I am concerned about gun control. There should be more gun control laws. There should be more laws that prevent people from having guns who are maybe mentally unstable. There should be more gun control laws, period. There shouldn't be a society which decides that everybody should own a gun no matter what. I think handguns are a problem. I think gun control laws are a problem.
There should be a lot to be done for that to stop. Like, it shouldn't be going on every day for people to just go and do like a lifestyle.
Concern for my own safety, no. But concern about society, probably yes. In a different ways. Probably because if we keep going in this way, it's gonna be like the Wild West soon. So I'm nobody to express an opinion, I know, but the truth is that violence brings violence. So if you want to stop with violence, probably you should stop advertise it a lot.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, crime, it's so, I mean, yeah, it's scary. It's definitely scary. Yeah, I'm concerned. If somebody is not concerned, then they're not listening to the news. That's the only reason somebody could not be concerned.
With so many medical associations describing gun-related casualties as a major public health crisis, we asked our experts how concerned we should all be about American crime and social decay.
There is no doubt that the U.S. medical associations are worried about gun crime, about violence becoming a public health issue. There is no doubt about it. There is a lot of gang warfare across the U.S. There is knife crime as well as gun crime, but it's exponentially in a country of 320 million. I will give a precise example. If I go to a baseball game in the heat of July at night in a stadium that seats 120,000 people, with the team's fans seated together, fans can't sit together in the UK, they're separated, and in Europe, but the fans of each team sit together. There isn't even one policeman needed because there is virtually never any violence at American sporting events throughout the whole season, throughout the whole year. Football, basketball, baseball. I mean, there's more anger and violence in Canada when ice hockey teams play than in the United States when basketball, baseball, and football are going on. Now, there is a joke. It's not a very nice way of talking about this, that you leave the stadium, you go to your car, and you get mugged. But even then, there is very little violence in large-scale groups of people gathering together in the U.S., rallies, football games, celebrations of July 4th and Thanksgiving, the Macy's parade. I mean, the most reported piece of violence was the bombing at the Boston Marathon, where several people were killed and 2 terrorists were involved in that. But to look at the U.S. as a country that has a serious problem, the American Medical Association does think it has a problem. But there are many problems in other countries with football violence, with street violence. London has a terrible problem with gang warfare and knife warfare.
Guns are not the problem. That is not the problem. That is a result of a bigger problem, the root of the problem, which is a corrupt society, corrupt government, corrupt police, corrupt courts, an entire political system rife with corruption. The whole system is completely corrupt, from the media to the businesses to the police, the whole thing. So this is the problem, the root of the problem. We've allowed our society to decay to such a degree that we solve problems with violence. And we use the guns we've got, but the gun is not the problem any more than money per se is a problem. Money in itself is not good or bad, but if it's in the hands of a tyrannical, psychopathic few, well, that becomes a big problem, because how do they use that money? Well, they use it for nefarious means to gain power and so forth. So I am not a gun fan, but taking away the guns from the people is not going to solve the problem. If anything, all that will do is embolden an already extremely violent and corrupt government and police system, which will violate the same people of America that much more.
Gun crime and an increasing lack of social cohesion are making America one of the most dangerous and tragedy-prone countries in the developed world. No fewer than 8 of its medical associations now describe gun-related casualties as a major public health crisis. It's a flashing warning light, pointing at increasing lawlessness and social decay. America's failure to address these has caused many to ask whether the American dream is turning into a violent and deadly nightmare.